Oilers get set to embark on the club's 37th National Hockey League season as they get set to take on the Calgary Flames. It's the Battle of Alberta, and to discuss the Flames, we bring in my counterpart from Flames TV, Ryan Leslie. Good morning, Ryan. Welcome to Rogers Place. How are you?
I'm tremendous. Thanks for having me, and a beautiful building, no doubt, up here in Edmonton. And yeah, it's great to be with you.
It's great to have you. We don't get to do this very often.
That felt forced. It seemed like you were maybe lying to me.
Yeah, I'm just being polite because we're on camera right now. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You're a good guy. The hubbub around the Flames. Let's talk about them as they get set to embark on this season as well. What's the big talk right now? I know they want to get back to the postseason like we saw a couple of years ago. What's going on around Calgary real quick?
Well, it's interesting. When you talk to any of the guys who were a part of this team last year, as far as the Calgary Flames are concerned, it's that bitter taste is still there. Mm-hmm. It still resonates. They want to learn from that. They want to improve on that. They got new coaches. They got new staff. They've got new faces, as we know. So there is a lot of that feeling of let's put last year behind us, but let's learn from it. Let's make this year count. They've again, we've talked about the faces. I know we're going to get into that, but there's a lot going on, a lot of change. New faces, one that you even know fairly recently here in Chris Versteeg. So there's a lot of intriguing storylines, and of course, the biggest news has to be Johnny Gaudreau recently.
How important was that deal, and specifically the timing?
The timing was fascinating, wasn't it? I mean, we left the rink one day thinking, boy, we're probably going to head up to Edmonton and not have Gaudreau in the lineup, and that didn't sit well.
Oilers fans didn't mind that.
Sure,
especially with the back-to-back.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
You're going to see each other twice. Yeah, that's right. So the idea of not having him here in Edmonton and with the club was a real scary feeling for people. I think it really started to get real, and then all of a sudden you leave the rink, you head home, word starts to trickle in, and Johnny Gaudreau re-signs for 6 years, and he came in right away the next day. We had a chance to chat with him and catch up on CalgaryFlames.com.
You can visit
you
them
might want to
if
head there
so choose.
right away. Break out of here
I'll hold
early
it against you.
And all kinds of content over there. Anyhow, but yes. Getting him locked up for 6 more years. He doesn't want to talk about the new contract anymore, Tom. He doesn't want to. This kid is wired for one thing, and that's playing hockey. It was business. I think both sides understood that. It never really got personal, even though I think it started to feel that way to some. They all understood it was a negotiation, and it was a process. And to Brad Treliving's credit, it was a realistic contract from term and dollars. Flames fans, I think, are very ecstatic to have this guy locked up.
Watching him the last 2 years, he's a heck of a player, and he causes all kinds of trouble for the Edmonton Oilers, as we've witnessed. Perhaps a casualty of the Gaudreau signing benefits the Edmonton Oilers, specifically on defense, and that's Chris Russell, a guy you got to know a little bit. What can you say about him? What are the Oilers getting in this guy? A good Alberta boy, but spent a lot of time with the Flames and played a big role on that blue line.
It's a great point and a great question. What the Oilers are getting and what the Oilers fans are getting is a competitor. This guy will go through the wall for this team and this city. You have got a real competitor, somebody who just wants to win. And in that room, in any room, you want a guy like Chris Russell. Polarizing player for some.
Yeah, he has his detractors when he signed here.
For sure. But there are people who will be close to this team who will know one thing about Chris Russell. He will do anything it takes to win. You got yourselves a heck of a defenseman, a quality person, and somebody who will be infectious. Doesn't have to be a loud speaker, Tom, in that room, but players will understand real close. If they don't know Chris Russell, they're going to know we're going to go to war with this guy, so to speak, and we're going to find ourselves competing harder because of a guy like him.
You just had a chance to speak with him and catch up, but how was that?
It was great to see him. It was a little odd, to be honest with you. It was a little odd for us. You get the sense maybe it's a little bit odd for him. I mean, he's been through this before. He's worn other jerseys, there's no doubt, and he's a pro, and he's excited to be here. But you did get the sense that this was a little different for him to be skating a few days ago in Calgary, wondering where things were going. Probably very similar to Chris Versteeg, except except there's a little bit of history there with the Flames and Chris Russell. He knows that, when he left and went to Dallas, it was a chance to try and win something. And now he's here to be a part of building something and also to try and win something here. Again, a very good defenseman, a very good addition for the Oilers.
I like how you brought up the Versteeg thing because, as you mentioned with the Gaudreau thing, we thought yesterday that a deal was imminent for Versteeg, and all of a sudden he's in Calgary signing
we'll take that.
Yes. Thank you very much. So familiar faces on both sides of the battle. if you will, but new faces as well. And goaltending was an issue last year for Calgary. What can you make of the goaltending situation now? Brian Elliott, we know what he's done in St. Louis. He's had a heck of a run, but that's also a great team in front of him. What do you make of the back end and the goaltending in Calgary?
Well, I think he's pretty excited about the blue line in front of him as well in Calgary. I think he feels that Mark Giordano, Dougie Hamilton, TJ Brody, he really feels that he's got a blue line in front of him. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's alluded to the fact that it's very comparable in his mind. And he is a positionally strong goaltender. Watch him tonight, and you'll come to the conclusion that at least positionally, he's always in it. And he's going to make saves. I think every team wants a goaltender that is going to make saves when you don't expect him to. Make a few that you don't expect him to.
Game changers.
Yeah, that's been lacking a little bit in Calgary the last few years. Ever since Mika Kiprasov, I could probably safely say that.
Yep, that's fair.
And he's back. As far as Brian Elliott, back with a one-year contract here in Calgary. And Chad Johnson, I think, watch for him to play a few more games than you might think a backup would. I think it's going to, because the thought Ken Hitchcock said about Brian Elliott was, this guy practices so hard that you might actually, and plays so hard that you might have to give him a little bit more rest. He is a competitor. He's all business. And I think Chad Johnson is a very capable backup. It wouldn't surprise me if you saw him play almost 30 games, somewhere in that mid-20 range.
Well, I mean, Brian Elliott did share the net quite a bit in St. Louis with a number of different guys. Do you think maybe that's a mental thing for him, too, to know that he can give way to someone else and have the reassurance in knowing that that guy will give the saves and the quality starts that team needs?
Yeah, for sure I do. And I think
in Chad Johnson.
Yeah, Chad Johnson is a Calgary guy playing for his hometown team where he grew up cheering on the Flames, so he's thrilled to be there. The preseason, he had a really good game in Winnipeg. He had a couple that he had some weird occurrences go on in a couple of preseason that goals weren't necessarily his fault in Vancouver and Calgary, but they feel very confident in him, and Brian Elliott obviously is your starter. There's a healthy 1-2, but it's 1A, 1B.
I have to ask you about the coaching change behind the bench, obviously. Glenn Gulutzan coming in. What have you made of him thus far? We saw him in Dallas a few years ago, and I think they missed by 1 point of getting into the playoffs. What's he been like, and what effect will he have on this roster?
Yeah, and an assistant coach for a few years in Vancouver as well. So he stays in the West, and he's very comfortable there. This is a guy who's got a really refreshing approach. He made a comparison, or an analogy rather, in the preseason, or maybe even it was when he came to town, about, hey, this is almost like an emotional bank account. He's going to let you have a little bit of a leash, but when he needs to make a withdrawal, if you will, from that bank account, he will. And it's interesting. He stopped practice a few times, and he's tore them apart verbally. But he's fantastic at. It's almost like as a player, or maybe it doesn't matter who you are, you don't want to let that person down. Rather than being scared of him, he knows how to manage. I will manage Tom Gazzola different than I will manage somebody else. You know, everybody's different, and he handles them all differently.
I see.
Some would say he's a player's coach, but he knows how to be firm when it needs to be.
Has he spoke to his past experiences, getting that head coaching job in Dallas, and then eventually, going behind the bench in Vancouver? Has he said anything about that helping him land this gig?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that, like a lot of first-time coaches, you learn more the second time around, provided there is a second opportunity.
Correct.
He thinks he's a better coach now because of what he's gone through in Dallas, of course, in the American Hockey League as an assistant with Vancouver. So he's taken all of these experiences and believes now, he's a young guy. I believe he's 45, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I'm 43, and look, I'm hanging out with you.
You're looking great.
Career paths. So, yes, he feels that this time around he's a better coach, better equipped, and I think that's the consensus. And Brad Treliving brought him in, he was always the lead horse in that head coaching race, and felt very strongly that this was a guy who can lighten the room, improve on those special teams, puck possession a lot more, and overall extract more out of his players.
He does seem like a real people person. I had a chance to talk to him very briefly in Penticton. We'll see how that goes tonight and Friday night. What are you looking for, Ryan, as these teams go back-to-back?
I'm fascinated to see, we're coming off the World Cup. We're talking about all that skill in the World Cup for the North American squad.
team. I didn't even want to watch any of it, and I was captured by them. Yeah. And
to see all of that skill out there tonight, I'm really fascinated to see what Lucic brings to the Oilers side, the space he creates. I'm fascinated to see Gaudreau, Monahan, and who emerges as one of their wingers. The great thing in Calgary is you've got some pairings at this point that you're comfortable with. Gaudreau and Monahan, Bennett and Brouwer, Frolik and Backlund. Now, who's going to step up and fill out those lines as a third, as a member of that trio? What will Matthew Tkachuk bring? Can he stay? This is his first game. Lost in all of this is Matthew Tkachuk,
right.
the 6th overall pick this year, who many thought would land in Edmonton. In fact, he, I think, at one point prior to the draft, thought, I'm going to be an Oiler. He thought that.
Well, Columbus threw everyone for a loop.
Yeah, and I spoke with him on draft day, and I spoke with him since about that whole moment when Columbus made their selection. He knew at that point that he was going to be a member of the Calgary Flames. He's turned a lot of heads. He was prickly in Penticton.
Mm-hmm.
He's been very prickly in the preseason, but tonight this guy makes his NHL debut. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Does he make a case to stay? He's got a challenge in front of him, but we saw Sean Monahan do it a few years ago. Nobody counted him in. Everybody thought he was going back to junior. We'll see what happens with Tkachuk.
There was a guy that I thought might wind up an Oiler a couple of years ago. It turns out
Stop
Calgary.
it. You can't have everybody, Tom. It's getting ridiculous over here.
Okay, finally.
Uncle. We want everybody.
The Flames TV guy would say that. Finally, I just want to ask, you had a chance to get into the room as we throw to a locker room tour. What'd you make of it thus far? Seeing that dressing room.
Are you asking me to pump the tires of the Oilers locker room?
100%.
Won't happen. It's lovely. Do we got to go to break?
Let's go to the locker room. Ryan Leslie, fantastic. I'll do this for you on Flames TV on Friday, right?
No, you're never getting near it.
Oh, come on. Oilers locker room
Thanks
tour
for
up
having me.
next.